us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, June 24, 2025, to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The question is that the aforesaid minutes be deferred. All those members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by His Honor the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers, government notices, private members' notices. Papers, sorry.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm commanded to lay the duties, taxes, and other payments exemption, JP Morgan Securities LLC, and Standard Chartered Bank, Order 2025.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, or replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 8, in the name of the Honourable Prime Minister, to resume the debate on the passing of a resolution that the Parliament of Barbados take note of the report of the Parliamentary Reform Commission 2024 and its recommendations.
Honourable member, before you proceed, I wish to acknowledge the presence of members of the Parliamentary Reform Commission. Honourable member for St. James Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, it's perhaps fortuitous that that which I'm about to say can be said in the presence of those people who labored so hard in order to bring this matter to this place. And you'll forgive me, Mr. Speaker, sir, if I might for a moment reflect on, only for a moment, what I can only describe as the appalling contribution that was made by the Leader of the Opposition in this place when he would have spoken. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was spared, and I'm therefore grateful only to the technology. I was spared having to endure that which was said when the Leader of the Opposition spoke. But there is in the English language, sir, a word called sophistry, which, given its ordinary meaning and interpretation, suggests that argument is fallacious and illogical, and, sir, evasive. And I thought that the contribution made by the Leader of the Opposition adequately satisfied the definition of the word sophistry. Now, sir, it disturbs me because this is a matter about which, as I said, very distinguished Barbadians have labored and have not labored in vain. But the contribution of the Leader of the Opposition reached the deploring depths, sir, to the point where he alleges that it is really, in his judgment, a waste of time to have come to this place with this report and the suggestions made in the report, sir, about how Parliament can be more effective as an institution in the apparatus of government in Barbados, simply because, sir, and he spent, I calculated it online, about 1 hour and 15 minutes of his contribution on the desirability, says he, of this report being couched within the context of a Republican constitution. And because there's no Republican constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir, that which has come before this House is pointless, is meaningless, is devoid of substance and merit. Now, sir, I can find nothing about that argument with which I would want to associate myself. The heavy emphasis, sir, on the Republican Constitution by the leader of the opposition, sir, is a matter of concern for me. And he alleges that this country lives in or exists in a political vacuum, a constitutional vacuum, because we still have a Westminster post-independence model of constitution and not, quote unquote, the Republican Constitution that he wants to dwell upon. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is at that point that the illogic in the argument ventures into the realm of the absurd. And this is where the concern for me lies. Sir, we can't come here and use a moment such as this, when the whole country perhaps can benefit from what is the real, in my judgment, the real concern facing Barbadians with respect to the question of Parliament in this country. And by extension, may I say, sir, as I read the current affairs of countries within this region and around the world, the concern on the lips of virtually every citizen in what we call Western democracies has been, sir, in recent times, the legitimacy of Parliament. Is Parliament working in the interests of people? Is there a level of satisfaction in the hearts and minds of people that that institution reflects my concerns adequately? Do the people who sit in the institution reflect my day-to-day experiences, lived experiences, and concerns adequately? In fact, sir, if you turn on CNN this morning, you will see that in the mighty United States of America, that is the issue of moment. That there is what they call a big, beautiful bill, but the big, beautiful bill is not deemed to be either beautiful, and perhaps overly big, by roughly 70% of the population of that country. Now, sir, let us bring this back to where the leader of the opposition will have us go. Because he begins and he locates his argument, and I want to say, sir, that I believe it is sophistry because to me, we were treated to a man presenting a fig leaf under which he seeks to hide the nakedness of the policies of the party he represents and the nakedness of his own views on these matters. I want to pull apart that fig leaf, sir. Let us look at this mystery or demystify this thing that we call the Republican Constitution. Ancient Rome, sir, was a republic. In 61, those cities of Rome, formerly around the peninsula where Italy is located, became the Kingdom of Italy. And to this day, sir, it continues to function as a republic. The United States of America is a republic of 249 years of age. Mr. Speaker, sir, the similarities between the two are tremendous. The emperors of Rome ruled by what you call a decree. The presidents of the United States, sir, have the capacity to issue what they call an executive order. Difference only in nomenclature. Same thing, essentially. I, as President of the United States, on day number 1 of my tenure, can issue 21 executive orders, gutting previously legislated climate policy of the country, gutting and destroying previously legislated and enacted legislation on the rights of immigrants in the country, gutting the rights of people, sir, who previously benefited under law and decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States with respect to abortion, and on and on and on. Let us be very real in the analysis, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I begin on this point. It is fallacy. Because the Prime Minister of Barbados, after all the long talk for an hour and a half and the speech of the Leader of the Opposition, you can't get around the fact that no Prime Minister of this country, including this one, can come to this place or any other place and issue a decree. There's no government by executive order in Barbados. And so therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, to set up a construct which says, oh, the work of the Constitutional Review Commission is a waste of time because we don't have a Republican constitution and there is a mass dictatorship in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, what is that? Because the substance and the methodology behind our governance, sir, is simply that there has to be passage of law through this place. There is the ancient principles of separation of powers where you have a legislature, you have an executive. Tell me, sir, if you want to talk about reform, that you may wish to have a conversation about whether the executive is too closely fused to the legislature. And we see the bodies on this front bench of members of the cabinet who are the executive, but we also form part of the legislature, obviously. And that is a conversation that has been had in other parts of the world, including Great Britain, from which we borrowed our model. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, you cannot sensibly, in my judgment, rest an argument on those foundations that the Leader of the Opposition sought to rest it on. And if there was merit in that which he was alleging, sir, then he would have used the opportunity to do the essentials. Not come to the party, sit at the bar stool at the party, sir, and offer only froth, but not any beer. You want to have a little beer. There must be some substance. Show me, show the House, and by extension, show those people ex-cathedra of this place outside the House of Assembly. Show those people, sir, who are within earshot of his voice, and who will read Hansard's reports, where there ought to be restrictions or removals of powers currently existing in the office of the Prime Minister of Barbados. But if you do not come armed with intelligent argument about where there is excessive power in the personage of the Prime Minister, and in the on the office of the Prime Minister and its capacity to wield power, but you only, sir, use your argument as a shield or an umbrella under which to shelter yourself while you hurl innuendo across the aisle, then, sir, you have not done anything useful in this debate. And that is my challenge, Mr. Speaker, sir. If I have not been able to hear from the Leader of the Opposition what powers of the Prime Minister specifically he would want to see restrained or removed, then he does himself, and by extension, this Parliament, a disservice. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, above and beyond what is now becoming a ritualistic reference to dictatorship, I think, sir, that the need exists for us to have a serious conversation about those issues which perhaps are more salient to reform. Now, as I said, I believe that one of the key things, if you did a survey out there, that you would hear people say immediately, is that we live in an era where there is increasingly declining trust in those people who hold political office. It is not unique to Barbados, though it is unfortunate. It is not unique to the region, sir, because all across this region you hear it. It is not unique, sir, to this hemisphere. It is a reality that we have to grapple with. Now, Mr. Speaker, how do we improve trust? I think those are the questions that may be now coming out of some of the recommendations made by the Parliamentary Reform Commission. I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, the question of how we enhance accountability is something that we have to look at. Now, without in any way wanting to focus exclusively on the Honourable Member, he is a classic example, sir, of where the issue of declining trust comes about. But he's not the only one, because this Parliament has had a history of persons sitting on one side of the House or on the other side of the house, sir, and in a moment of vexation, in a fit of personal pique, or in a moment, sir, of deep philosophical division, a man or woman may get up, though I don't know of any women in the history of Barbados who've done it, but a man may get up and say, I am finished with this side, and I'm going to sit elsewhere, sir, and I'm going to take a different posture. That is the right of the individual who is the sitting member of Parliament. And the Leader of the Opposition, in my judgment, quite rightly locates that right under Section 21 of the Constitution of Barbados, which guarantees to all of us a freedom of association. I have no difficulty with that. He is free to associate, as he must in law be free to disassociate himself. Where his argument falls on very infertile soil, sir, is when he fails to go further. And that is why I say that we are getting into argument of sophistry. The honourable member must know that the same Section 21 of the Constitution, which bequeaths on him a right to freely associate and disassociate as he wishes, also says that that right, sir, is subject to a more morally compelling right or consideration, an overriding and more morally compelling consideration, which is the duty to ensure that the rights and freedoms of others are not impeded. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can come to that deliberately. Let us understand that all the rights in the Constitution are subject to those morally overarching and more morally compelling considerations. I have a right to life. But my right to life, Mr. Speaker, sir, is subject to the overarching and overriding morally compelling consideration that my right to life is mine and exclusively mine, can't be interfered with unless I take the life of another. I have a right, sir, to my personal freedoms, but my personal freedoms are subject to the morally compelling consideration that my freedom must be restrained if I am a threat to the wider society. And in the same vein, Mr. Speaker, the constitutional right to which the honourable member alludes at Section 21 of the Constitution of Barbados, sir, is equally limited by fetters. And what are those fetters? And it is time now that if we're going to talk about reforming Parliament, let us seriously talk about reforming Parliament and not come to Parliament and treat this discussion as an opportunity once again to engage in the politics of twiddly-dee and twiddly-dum. I point a finger at you and you point a finger at me. But that this society has not been lifted, sir, by educated argument that should take us to a larger and better dimension. Mr. Speaker, sir, ought it not to be part of the consideration going forward that if I decide that I am incapable of working any longer with this team of people with whom I came to this place, that even if I feel fundamentally that there's a philosophical difference between myself, sir, and all the rest of them, and I must therefore, as a matter of principle, part company with them, Mr. Speaker, sir, who sent me here? That's the question that ultimately has to be asked at some point in this game. Who sent me here? In fact, let me not say game, because I think the reason why we have this lack of trust is because it has been treated as a game. In this business, Mr. Speaker, sir, we were all sent here by a body of people called a group of constituents. Constituents who may have taken many things into their consideration before giving a vote to any of us. They may have liked, sir, us on a personal capacity and in a personal way. Willie, you's a good fella, I would give you my vote. But equally, as that is being said, yes, and equally as that is being said, they may also say, but you know, the boss lady, I've got to make sure that the boss lady back as Prime Minister again. And the only way I can do that is to give Willie my vote, even though I don't particularly like he.
I don't hear that at all.
Whether or not that is heard, sir, this is just by way of as an example. Equally, Mr. Speaker, sir, It may be that the policies and the history of policy implementation of the party that we speak to, which is not recognized in the Constitution of Barbados at all. Let's remember that. No part of our Constitution speaks to a political party. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, people out there have a lived reality. They have a lived understanding. They know that there are parties, don't mind what the Constitution says or don't say, and they know that the parties have implemented policies that are germane and relevant to them and have acted in their interests, or they have not. And in those circumstances, people may say, I can give the BLP the vote. I don't care who the body is, the BLP gonna get the vote, or any other party. And Mr. Speaker, sir, if then we understand it in that broader context, we come to understand the importance, perhaps, of there being a duty to engage the wider public. Nobody, I would defy anybody to condemn or to impugn the right of the leader of the opposition to freely associate and disassociate as he wishes. But equally, there are rights of others who have cast a vote, who cast a vote within a context of a certain understanding and expectation. And that right, sir, I believe, must now be something that is subject to consultation after you choose as an individual to freely exercise your discretion to disassociate or associate elsewhere. No, Mr. Speaker, sir, that has never been part of what we do in Barbados. It is part of what is required in other parts of the world. And it's perhaps if we're having a discussion, as I believe, I didn't hear at the beginning of this, I hear that the whip is off and that I can speak freely without having to worry about sanction from political party or colleagues. So let me say that I believe that this is a matter about which we should be having serious consideration in this country. Because is there a necessary second step in the process of crossing the floor? I believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, that many people out there will say that they will feel comfortable if they had a right to be consulted in the process of crossing the floor. Not in the way, sir, that we have heard it being said by the leader of the opposition, I believe about 2 weeks ago, when he alleged that he will speak to the people of Christchurch South before he makes any decision about running in any other constituency. And lo and behold, it has come to light that a letter from the leader of the opposition has landed with the General Counsel or Executive Council or both of the Democratic Labour Party for him to be seeking life, political life, in the constituency in the east of this country, formerly held by a right honourable member of this country and now national hero of Barbados. Now, Mr. Speaker, so that's a matter for him to work out because it fell from his lips that he would consult with the people of Christchurch South. I confess, as Foreign Minister, I have to travel frequently, so I may have missed the consultation. But he, sir, has to work out now how he navigates that particular set of circumstances that currently exist. But the right, sir, that should fall to those people who elected you to be consulted in these matters of members of Parliament crossing the floor, I think is an important point of departure. I also feel, Mr. Speaker, sir, that inextricably linked to that is this question of the right of recall. Now, this member of Parliament has no problem facing a right of recall. I believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it is important for us to recognize that none of us, sir, should expect that we are without or going to be seen as being without sin and without failing. All of us are expected to do our best. Many of us, sir, may fall short of the high standards set by the Barbadian public, the demanding standards set by the Barbadian public. But I have confidence in the Barbadian public, sir, to believe that they are not unreasonable people. They're not unreasonable men and women. I also feel, sir, that history in this place has taught me that it has been possible for people, sir, to be accused of and to have, on all available evidence, found to be complicit in matters, sir, of a criminal or quasi-criminal nature, and still retain a place in this Parliament. I feel, Mr. Speaker, sir, that if the elderly and the indigent, the physically challenged, sitting in a wheelchair, are able to make a case that they have been financially, I don't want to use the word unfair because it is more serious than that, disadvantaged by an individual, sir, who sits in this place but is acting in a different capacity. Then, Mr. Speaker, sir, ought it not to become an issue that those who sent that person to this place, sir, should have a voice in? Is it not likely that the best of us will be brought out if there is a level of sanction outside of this place now about certain behavioral practices that may take place by people in this place? These are difficult questions, Mr. Speaker. I have no doubt about it. And it is always difficult to ask the question, who will guard the guards? And because nobody wants to answer the question, then these matters we ain't hear about now for the first time. These matters have been talked about behind closed doors and in some cases in the open for many years. But nobody wants to bell the cat because nobody wants to be the person to hold up the hand to say, I will be the person to guard the guards. But if we are talking about a process of parliamentary reform and how we make the parliament a place that people can trust, and those who are in parliament have their feet held to the fire of accountability, then, sir, surely it must also be that the difficult questions of whether or not there has been an issue now worthy of public censure, whether or not that should be a matter about which constituents have a right to reflect. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, as it now stands, they do not. There are those who will say glibly that at the end of a term of 5 years, the constituents will have a chance to vote anyhow. And while that is true, the question is there a desirable step of having that measure of accountability brought to bear more urgently than waiting the effluxion of 5 years? Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, those are matters about which I think the Commission has reflected, and my view and the Commission's view will not always be the same. But I see in good men and women loyal and true to Barbados the judgment to have brought and the courage to have brought these matters to the forefront and to open the door for national discussion on them. I feel, Mr. Speaker, sir, equally that the question of overseas representation is one that we have to be candid about at some point. Not only because I carry the title now of Foreign Minister of the country, but, Mr. Speaker, as a Barbadian, seeing what is happening to Barbadian people and to West Indian people and to African people, and let me go further in the hemisphere and say to Latino people in other parts of the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, I recognize that that which people have loosely called and defined as being the diaspora of many countries does not necessarily any longer live comfortably in the places where they now reside, oftentimes in the North Atlantic. I do not identify any one country in the North Atlantic in this regard. Let me say to you that I spent 2 nights in England and listened to the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, who, if she did not speak with British accent, and you just happened to see her in a bus or in a train, one would reasonably conclude that this lady was out of Africa or out of the Caribbean. But that which fell from her lips was a condemnation of the immigrant community in the United Kingdom. A fierce and ferocious condemnation, might I add, to the extent where she questioned the relevance of their continued presence. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, let us not believe then that Washington, D.C. is the centerpiece, the beginning and the end of this issue. An election just took place in Canada. And if but for the judgment of the Canadian electorate, the election could have gone a different way. And a leader of the opposition over there, Mr. Speaker, sir, who I believe lost his seat, was as ferocious in his condemnation of the immigrant community in Canada as one would hear fall from the lips of the farthest right-wing member of MAGA in the United States of America. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a mood in the North Atlantic that is no longer as welcoming to our diaspora. Now, once we recognize that, is there not a duty on the part of us here at home to be able to bring a more rigorous degree of participation and more broad degree of opportunity for our diaspora to be involved in the matters of this country, while we in this country find ways of better grappling with some of the challenges faced by the diaspora overseas? The relationship between our diaspora and ourselves cannot be a matter of convenience. It cannot be that in this year of regathering, we want them to come home. And we want you to come home because we want you to spend some money, yes. We want you to make charitable contributions, yes. We want you, Mr. Speaker, sir, to think about investment in the country, yes. But there has to be a flip side of the coin. What do we as Barbadians want to do for our diaspora, our diasporic Barbadian families out there? How better can we embrace them? How better can we have a relationship with them that gives them voice and some modicum of protection in circumstances where what might be very ill-conceived immigration laws in from country to country may have undesirable consequences, and perhaps even unintended consequences on families, on the rights of little children to be at school and educated, on housing, Mr. Speaker, sir. And on this, the day that there is a grave danger in the United States of Medicaid and Medicare being brought to an end, on public health. These are questions, sir, that we cannot forever sweep under the carpet. And I want to say, sir, that in the context now of an opportunity in this discussion of parliamentary reform, I listened carefully to the speech of the Leader of the Opposition, hoping to hear a rebirthed Democratic Labour Party full of purpose, full of principles, saying, we have a position. He spoke to the matter, sir, only to say that it existed. His policy was that they have no policy. Don't laugh, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is a serious indictment of a man who stands at first slip, metaphorically, standing at first slip, waiting for the ball of governance to drop into his lap. You can't, on a matter as fundamental of this as this. And I want to go further, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are a small country that is often contrived against by mighty powers. The Europeans collectively have had issues with our international financial services regime. The United States, from time to time, has had issues with our international financial services regime. Our international financial services regime, what we call the offshore business sector, sir, has accounted for as much as 2/3 of the corporation taxes taken in this country. That is what put light on playing fields. That is what, Mr. Speaker, sir, ensure QEH can continue to function, that we can put children back in school getting free tertiary education when other people said all is lost and they withdrew it, Mr. Speaker, sir. It's a fundamental sector. But when the sector comes under attack, should there not be now a voice from Barbados which is located in the diaspora? In my judgment, it is necessary, let me say that now, so that that which we need to do to have an ability to lobby members of government at all tiers in the structures overseas in the North Atlantic, the federal level, the state level, Mr. Speaker, sir, and then counties, so that that which concerns Barbados and that which by extension concerns the Caribbean can resonate and be heard. And that, yes, in the same way as those folks are prepared to sit down with the Israelis and the Jews in New York and recognize that the vote may not come if the policy is not appropriate. There should not be a taken for granted of the vote of the Caribbean people if the policy is not appropriate. But who's saying that, Mr. Speaker, sir?
Honourable member has 2 more minutes.
Only 2 minutes, sir?
Only 2
Well,
minutes.
I was now ready to go to town.
You can, but only in 2 minutes.
Let me hasten then to say, sir, let me hasten then to say, sir, that there's another aspect of this about which I think we must be very frank. That this Parliament has rules, and that we have not been using the rules, and that, sir, I want to urge that we could come to a point, and this is not, I think you mentioned in the review commission, but I feel strongly, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we must revise the standing orders of this Parliament for there to be some fundamentals about which you cannot deviate. One of them, sir, is the use of parliamentary questions, and the other one, sir, is the Prime Minister's question time. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is all well and good for members of the opposition in this place and the other place and outside of these places to get up and slur, make charges that are baseless, indulge in innuendo. But the public, sir, has to be educated, and they can be educated, sir, very easily through question time. I sit next to an honourable member who, in opposition, used it very effectively. That's right. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a tragedy that an honourable member of our leader of the opposition can come to this place and make charge upon charge upon charge without foundation, but will not ask a single question about that which he makes a charge in order to get an answer, in order to face a debate on the matter which he's raising by way of innuendo. It is an act of cowardice, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is an act of cowardice. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the country is done an injustice because people out there will believe that there's merit in the allegation. But if a question is asked and you face the minister toe-to-toe, or the Prime Minister toe-to-toe, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is now a matter of who can adduce evidence and who can adduce weight of argument, and it takes it into a different perspective. And the laziness, intellectually, which enables an honourable member to draw a salary without doing work, Mr. Speaker, sir, is brought to an end. And the spotlight, sir, is also placed on those of us in government because we have to be able to step up to the plate of accountability before the public. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sorry that I have such little time, but I feel fundamentally that these are some of the things that we have to look at.
Sorry that you have such a limited time?
Sir, I feel...
That is why standing orders, 30 minutes.
I'm familiar with standing orders, sir. I've just expressed my own personal regret that time has elapsed.
I'm sorry, I offer you sympathy.
I'm grateful, sir, for your indulgence, and I am obliged to the patience of the House.
Honourable member, St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to speak briefly this morning on what I think will probably go down as one of the most important conversations this country could have. I also wish to reiterate, sir, that while this is a conversation that we are having, that the matter that is before the Cabinet is nothing that we drafted ourselves. It is not our work, sir. It is actually a matter that we have had the opportunity to reflect upon, as did all of Barbados, sir, and to offer our thoughts on this process, sir. I have now been in this Parliament for 7+ years, sir. And I feel that there are times when we must have conversations that should be above basic partisan divide. And this is one such matter, sir, that I hope can get that level of conversation, or I had hoped. Regrettably, that was not to be. But Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want to take you where my mind took me when we started this conversation last week in this Parliament, but really where my mind took me when we started this conversation, period. As a former lecturer in social policy and social theory, my mind took me to social contract theory. And I also reflected on it, sir, because during the parliamentary debate, when we brought the budget, the leader of the opposition spent his time, his entire context was about democracy being a tyranny in the making. And while he used the concept out of context, sir, I will wish to locate it properly today. That conversation about democracy and a tyrant and a tyranny in the making, sir, as I said then, is really an elitist perspective, which suggests that if you brought common people into public life, if if you gave them the authority to determine who would lead you, because they are so basic and because they have no moral integrity that they could be prone to anything. So the entire premise of the Leader of the Opposition was faulty. But we have, sir, as we look at parliamentary reform, to understand what it is and what should be the nature of the relationship between the state and the people that the state is supposed to be governing, sir. And I would suggest to you that the way you see that relationship would help you understand how some people would seek to determine what should be the nature of our new parliament and how that should look, Mr. Speaker, sir. In social contract theory, there are three well-known persons, and I will go through this very, very quickly, sir. Most of us know of Hobbes. And Hobbes suggested at the time, sir, that the state of nature was one where it was war, all man against man. Life is short, it is brutish. And to be able to have governance and proper structure, you needed a Leviathan, a authority figure that no one could question. We then went on, sir, and that was probably around 1651. We also had Locke, sir, and his treatise, John Locke, sir. And he saw it differently. Not that men were supposed to be against men. Human beings had the capacity to be reasonable, and that society could corrupt them. And we saw a similar thinking, not quite the same, but in 1762 from Rousseau. This idea, sir, that human beings had some form of integrity, sir, that they could enter into a contract with each other. How we perceive the state of our modern country and the parliament that should be helping to govern it, sir, is going to be critical. And I say so, sir, because I've heard during the last few months some very strange comments coming from the opposition. While we were in St. James North, I heard that the people are hungry. I heard that the entire country is in a state of pure unrest. We heard, and we still continue to hear, sir, if you were to listen, you would think that it would be unsafe to walk down any street in this country. And that many of us who come to this office, sir, come so in our own interest, which is not true. In fact, sir, I would like to reflect on this document by saying that this document is not about politicians really at all. It is essentially about how do we seek to be able to govern in a modern Barbados, sir, in a way that allows us, sir, to reflect the interests of the people. And that is what I read. In a way, sir, that is fit for purpose, sir, that would allow us to reflect the interests of the people, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think this conversation around our parliament is going to be extremely, extremely important. I listened to the Honourable Member for St. James North, St. James Central, sorry, as he spoke, sir. And that we do know, we recognize that there is now almost a latent but growing distrust between the state and the people that it governs. This has happened all over the world, sir. And through our own actions, sometimes, sir, we can make that matter worse. When we come here, sir, there are people who listen to us. I remember very recently a conversation of a man who said, we listen to you all. When you speak in that parliament, you may not think it, but we listen. Our words, sir, carry significant weight. And I think this conversation must be one, sir, that is not located necessarily in politics, but located, sir, in an intellectual, real conversation about what the country now demands from us that would be fit for purpose, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, Parliament has three functions generally. We have, sir, to represent the electorate, which all of us do in this place, sir. We have, sir, to be able to make laws, sir. We have to be able to oversee the government, sir, via hearings and inquiries and so on and so forth, sir. And the question that must be asked and answered is, to what extent does this parliamentary reform report allow us to be able to address these three things? To what extent is value added in relation to these three things, Mr. Speaker, sir? They say, sir, some say, John Bright said, that the mother of all parliaments is the British Parliament. Our situation, sir, our parliament is very much similar in many ways. They have a monarch, sir, we had a governor general, we now have a president. They have the House of Commons, we have the House of Assembly. It's a little bit different with the House of Lords, sir, but we have a Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, you know, interestingly, I think this conversation too has to be about what should be the powers of the Senate, which we saw in the report, sir. In the British government, sir, the laws, the acts of 1911 and 1949 served to put limits on what the House of Lords could do. In other words, sir, they cannot veto what came out of the House of Commons. To what extent should the Senate be able to veto what comes out of the House of Assembly, sir. It's a question I think we have to ask and answer, where persons are elected to represent the majority of Barbadians, sir, and can be vetoed in the parliament, in a Senate. These are the kinds of questions and the intellectual conversations I offer no position, but these are the kinds of intellectual conversations that I hope this country can have. And that the kind of conversation that I had hoped that this particular report would be able to stimulate, so that we take it to a different place, sir. And we've seen in Barbados where important legislation would come to this parliament and has gone down to the Senate, sir, and did not make it out to the Senate. And these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have. If we are elected to serve, to what extent can an unelected body be able to veto what comes out of this place, sir? Again, I say offer no position on it, but I do hope it is a conversation that we can have, sir. Furthermore, sir, as I said, these conversations are around lawmaking, representation, and oversight. Are we doing the best that we can do in the current model, sir? Does the current model allow us to do that? Is what is being offered here going to put us in a position, sir, where we are in a better position to do these three things? Lawmaking, this idea of oversight, and representation, sir. And if these questions are not asked and answered by this report, then I fear that the report probably would not have hit the mark. But I would say to you, sir, that I believe that these questions have been asked, and to some extent they have been answered. But that all of us have to have an opinion as to whether the value that has been added by this report allows us to be fit for a purpose as we go forward, Mr. Speaker, sir. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I am aware of a concept called isomorphic mimicry. This is the idea that small states, developing states, try to build systems that are very similar to what larger, richer states have. And that they're only so really in form, but not in function and not in purpose. So that you could have an institution that looks very much familiar, very similar to something that exists in a larger state, in a more developed state, but that it does not function the same. And people have asked us, why are we spending so much time with this idea that we must deconstruct and reconstruct? We're doing it, sir, in education. We're doing it in health. We're doing it in the social sector. We're even doing it in foreign affairs. Where are going to be new areas? Where should we now be looking to have new relationships? You know, it is almost funny to me that whenever we come here and we propose that we do new things, the almost standard response from the opposition is, why do you need to do this? Because some people are so loyal to the old ways, even though many of them were never built for us. And even though prosperity now in a modern Barbados requires that we form these new relationships, sir, some people are so loyal to the old ways that they cannot begin to conceptualize that these things have meaning in a modern Barbados, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is why the conversation on education reform is going to be important. That is why I'm spending so much time trying to deconstruct and reconstruct my own ministry, the social services sector. Do the things that we have, the institutions, sir, serve the purpose? Is a modern welfare state supposed to look like the welfare state of 100 years ago? Should our child protection legislation, sir, be guided by legislation that was written before most of us were considered to be human? Mr. Speaker, sir. Should we have a parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, where we cannot review some of the ways that are being practiced in this parliament? You know, when you touch certain things, people get very uncomfortable. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am thrilled to be in this parliament at this time when we are having this conversation. I do believe, as I said in the beginning, sir, this is perhaps the most important conversation that we can have, sir. And it takes me back, sir, again, to how is it that we see the people that we are supposed to govern. And I look at this report, sir, the more people try to put powers into one person, this idea of a Leviathan, this idea that if you give powers to the masses, that you create a tyranny, which is the treatise of the leader of the opposition. You give power to the masses, and a tyranny will emerge. Essentially, just look at his budget presentation. That was the entire presentation, Mr. Speaker, sir. But if we see the people as being capable, morally sound, as Barbadians are, Mr. Speaker, sir, the conversation that we are having here now about going back to the people on some of these most important conversations, sir, is one that we should all have, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I say so because this conversation, sir, there are a few points that I wish to make specifically about this report, which I will get to in a minute, sir. But there are some things that I know will cause some people a little bit of trepidation. But these are the conversations that we need to have, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I look at what is in a proper parliament. And the idea that parliamentary, institutional, and the legal and parliamentary framework, sir, the institutional framework, is one of the conversations that we need to discuss, Mr. Speaker, sir. Where do we stand in relation to these matters, Mr. Speaker, sir? Mr. Speaker, sir, the principal place for discussing and debating policies and conducting oversight must be here. We have now set up a range of joint select committees, sir. Mr. Speaker, even though parliamentary reform has not yet passed, we have been in the process of reforming, at least in our practice. We took a bill on child protection, Mr. Speaker, sir, and other bills, and have sent them to a joint select committee for review. The things that are unheard of. And people have come into this parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, ordinary Barbadians, and have had their say at the level of parliament in relation to some of the most pressing matters, even in cases where we had had consultation, Mr. Speaker, sir. And those views were accommodated and reflected in the final position of the bill, sir, where it was that they mattered, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is the kind of conversation that I had hoped that we could have had when we brought this presentation here, Mr. Speaker, sir. The idea around political parties, sir, and the groups that play an important role in determining the previous position, sir. We don't have political parties mentioned in our Constitution now, Mr. Speaker, sir, but perhaps we should. We don't discuss political parties, Mr. Speaker, sir, but many of us know that we get here because of the position of our political parties that we serve in. We may think that we are brilliant, we may think that we are great, but many of us, most of the political scientists would tell many of us that to do it on your own and see how great you think you really are, Mr. Speaker, sir. I will not speak on any particular individual, sir, but I do know that many of us reflect we have the capacity to stand in this place because of the political party that we supported, Mr. Speaker, sir. But yet we do not have that conversation about how do we regulate them, how are they to be governed, sir. These are the kind of matters that I see emerging from this presentation, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also feel that this conversation on parliamentary reform takes us into a conversation on leadership. And in adaptive leadership, the idea is that there are things that work that you hold on to, and there are things that do not work that you must release. The things that work, you keep. The things that do not work, you release. You hold on to the DNA that works, Mr. Speaker, sir. And you let go of the things that do not work. And we cannot wholesale adopt in 2025 the things that we would have had before. There's some things, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we have to let go. And this is a conversation about now and a conversation about the future. I believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, and this is my personal belief, sir, and this is how I feel in my heart, that when we reflect on the conversations that we have had, not only on parliamentary reform, on constitutional reform, the move to a republic, sir, all these various things, that history will be very kind to this party, and that perhaps history will reflect that the leader of this country is perhaps one of the most transformative minds that this country has seen in a long, long, long time, Mr. Speaker, sir. But, sir, we cannot be loyal to a system that does not necessarily serve us, Mr. Speaker, sir. We cannot be loyal to a system that does not serve us. I now meet, sir, on a regular basis with young people, sir. They see us as guardians of their future, but they understand, sir, that this earth is seasoned by the blood and the sweat and the tears of our ancestors, sir, many of whom our present behavior, sir, would seek in many ways to violate their very interests, sir, and the fights that they stood for, the fights that they engage in, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not good enough to say that we are loyal to the old ways, Mr. Speaker. I feel that parliamentary reform is going to be, as I said before, one of the most important conversations that we can have. But it cannot be, and it must not be, that we stay loyal to systems that are no longer fit for purpose, Mr. Speaker, sir. I look at all of our institutions, sir. Perhaps we judge our institutions too harshly. Perhaps we cannot ask our institutions to do what they were not created to do. We ask some of the institutions that we set up 100 years ago to be able to be relevant now. Mr. Speaker, sir, without being able to say there are things that we have to be able to change, Mr. Speaker, sir. And this is a conversation around what do we keep, what do we let go of? Where are the new ideas that we need to be able to bring to the fore, Mr. Speaker? What are the conversations that we have to have, sir? But I do know this, that whether it is this government or another government, whether we choose to adopt wholesale the recommendations of the committee, sir, and I would wish to commend the committee for what I think was really sterling work, or whether we wish to take those recommendations wholesale, or whether we wish to go through them one by one, sir, I do know that we can no longer kick this can down the road, and that we have to have a conversation in this place about what will work and what will not work, sir. But we cannot create a system that looks the part but cannot do the work. We cannot create a system, sir, that looks like what other people are doing but cannot do the work. That is even more dangerous than to not have parliamentary reform at all, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so we have to go through, as we did as a party, we have to go through each of these recommendations, Mr. Speaker, sir. I invite the country to go through them one by one. One by one. We don't have time here to do it today, sir, but to go through them one by one. Look at them. Does this make sense for Barbados? Should be the question that has to be asked and answered. And does it make sense for Barbados in 2025 and beyond, Mr. Speaker, sir? I fear that perhaps the greatest threat to this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to say that we have done parliamentary reform when we have not actually engaged in parliamentary reform, sir. If it is that the recommendations of the committee, sir, cause so much fear that none of them can be adopted, sir, it is more a reflection of who we have become than who we are, and more reflection of our own limitations than the limitations of the committee, Mr. Speaker, sir. People don't want to have conversations about whether we should be discussing this paper or not. Some have said that this paper should not even be here, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is because, sir, some people are so loyal to the old ways because the old ways have brought them favor. But we, sir, must not govern for ourselves. We must govern for the generation to come, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I believe, sir, that all of us, sir, who now have some understanding, I believe the average Barbadian is still, contrary to the leader of the opposition, I still think the average Barbadian is morally sound, tremendously bright, and capable of playing a part in the governance of this country, sir. I do not believe, I cannot believe, that a democracy will lead to a tyranny because ordinary people form part of that government, Mr. Speaker, sir. If that were so, many of us would not be in this room, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is an elitist perspective, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is one that we have with all the fiber in our being, sir. We have to denounce it. We have to say that we continue to believe in the average Barbadian, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wanted to talk, Mr. Speaker, sir, about our weak implementation capacity, but I will not do that now. But I do know, sir, that unless we change most of our institutions, sir, the idea that CDB keeps saying the Caribbean does not implement projects. We hear it from Global Affairs Canada. We've heard it from all the international institutions, sir, because our institutions look the part, but they cannot function. Our parliament, in some ways, may look the part, sir, but may not be able to function. That is why we have sometimes, sir, to take a step back, sir, to look at it with objective eyes and re-engage. And this paper, sir, allows us to be able to do that, Mr. Speaker, sir, to allow us to be able to re-engage. But on this presentation specifically, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are a few things that I would wish only because of the time considerations, just at a surface level, sir, but I invite Barbadians to read the entire report. It is really worthy of conversation, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Prime Minister raised the idea of a non-elected speaker. I don't think it's in the report, but the Prime Minister raised the idea. I have stood in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, for 7 years, as I said. I have had conversations, and I'm not saying that you will always be the person in the chair, but I've had conversations, sir, where, sir, it is in the report, I apologize. I have had conversations, sir, where I felt that we could have benefited significantly from a perspective similar to the person who is Speaker of this House, sir, but who is unable to speak. Sir, we've had conversations around matters in our constituency. And I know it must be a difficult thing to be a speaker, sir, where we're discussing matters in our constituency, sir, and that a person as involved in the constituency as our current speaker is, sir, is unable to speak on those things. And that Barbadians, the way that we vote, they vote on all these things. I have not heard you speak in the parliament in the matters that affect me. But you are not in a position to say to them in a way that they appreciate, I am not allowed to speak on these things. And that people who are elected to this place, sir, I outlined when I began what are the 3 areas. And one of the more important ones beyond lawmaking was representation. If you come to Parliament, sir, and you're unable, by virtue of the position you hold, to represent the people that put you here, sir, it puts the speaker at a disadvantage. I do believe that we should have a non-elected speaker, sir, and that the 30 people, and independent, and that the 30 or so people, how many ever they are, persons who serve in the Parliament, sir, come recognizing that they have a responsibility to make laws and to be able to represent, sir. And that it is best allowed, sir, when a person who is voted on for, sir, can come to Parliament and speak on these matters. I have so many thoughts on this, sir, but time would not allow me to continue. I also feel, sir, that we have to have this conversation around political parties and being able to properly regulate them and to have them registered, Mr. Speaker, sir. I believe that. I believe that because I believe many of us come here, as I said, on virtue of the political party that we serve, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also feel that sometimes people associate themselves with the idea of a party, not necessarily on the idea of the person running. Sir, I am not so fond of myself to believe that I got here on my own, sir. Some may think so. But I'm not so fond of myself to believe that. When I entered St. Michael South, Mr. Speaker, sir, many people did not even know who I was. They had no idea who Kurt Humphrey was, Mr. Speaker, sir. But they knew that I was representing a party that had expressed their concerns, sir, that had articulated their struggles, Mr. Speaker, sir, that had clearly defined prospects for the future with which they could associate. And that found favor with the people, Mr. Speaker, sir. Political parties, sir, are vital and critical to our understanding of our democracy. And it is time, sir, that we begin to understand that. The idea that we should register them and regulate them, sir, sits well with me because I believe the people associate themselves sometimes with political parties even before they associate themselves with the candidate. Then when you become a candidate, Mr. Speaker, sir, you have to make sure that you carry their hopes and their aspirations in a way, sir, that is genuine and is courteous to their genuine position, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is what I believe. I also, sir, would want to talk about this conversation about crossing the floor and whether you should go back to the people. Mr. Speaker, sir, I believe that so strongly. I felt that long before I was a politician. That if it is that you come because of my view, because this obviously follows, if it is that you come to this place as a member of a political party, I believe the political party, sir, has a lot to do with whether you get here or not. And you cross to another political party, sir. Not only are you being disingenuous to the party, you're being disingenuous to the people that have put you here because they oftentimes associate your presence with the party and the principles of that party, Mr. Speaker, sir. And this has nothing to do with any one person, sir. I have felt this way from time immemorial. If you want to, sir, cross the floor, feel free, go back to the people and ask the people for their vote, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I support this recommendation very, very strongly, Mr. Speaker, sir. And then there are some things, sir, that are a little bit more technical. I see the report speaks of training of parliamentarians and staff. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've been a technocrat for most of my life. I was, as you know, sir, like you, a public servant for a significant period of my life. We come here and we articulate policies, Mr. Speaker, sir. We have to be in a position, sir, I think, where we understand the things that we are technically responsible for, but that our staff must be trained to the highest order, sir. I spoke of the implementation gap that we have to be able to fill, and that we can only do that, sir, if we properly train our staff, we properly train the parliamentarians, and so on and so forth, sir. The public hold us to a very high regard. And this conversation around whether we should have proper training, to me, sir, is really moot at this point. We need to do it. We need to do it. The Barbadian parliamentarians should be highly trained. The staff in this parliament should be highly trained, Mr. Speaker, sir. And why? Not because it is in their interest so to do, but because at this level, sir, we represent all of the people. And you want the best quality representative people in this place, sir. The recommendation around the Chief Parliamentary Council, sir, have not landed one way or the other. But I do believe that the CPC's office is so important that we have to strengthen it. Whether or not, sir, we transfer it and incorporate it into the structure of the Parliament, I have not settled my mind on, but I do know that it's important, sir. I do not think there has been a Parliament in the history of this country that has produced as much legislation as we have in the last 7 years. And what people may not appreciate is that that means that the Chief Parliamentary Council and the staff there have been working overtime to be able to get us here, Mr. Speaker, sir. I do believe, sir, that that office has to be given more staff, sir. I believe that that staff has to be trained at the highest level, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because if we are to produce the quality of legislation and the quantity of legislation that a country that is in transition must produce, then we have to be able to strengthen the Chief Parliamentary Council, sir. They're doing too much work, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I believe that we have to reward them, sir, with a stronger, wider, bigger, deeper set of staff. The last point that I would raise, sir, Mr. Speaker, is the code of conduct. And I support it, Mr. Speaker, sir. I do. And I do support it, sir, throughout the public service as well, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I will not spend a lot of time on that, sir, because I believe most Barbadians support it. But I would wish to close, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I began. I do not believe that though this is a Parliamentary Reform Commission report, that this is a conversation on partisan politics. I believe that this report is way too important to find itself mired solely in politics, Mr. Speaker, sir. I believe that this is about us being able to create a parliament, sir, that is fit for purpose, that allows us, sir, as I said, to honor the work of our ancestors, sir, while at the same time reflecting the needs and the aspirations, ambitions, and hopes of a generation that is yet to come. And we must be able to do both of those things. This report, sir, has done it beautifully in my imagination, sir, in my estimation, sir. It's captured the things that I think we must hold on to, but it's also asked us to consider new things. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is regrettable that some of us choose to make it a political conversation, sir. But I have sense coming from this report, sir, and from this Parliament, sir, and from the Prime Minister who leads this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have, for now, sir, the last few years, sir, I have made eye contact with the future. I do not believe that this Parliament, sir, should be sidetracked or distracted or derailed by political shenanigans, sir. For what? For a vote? When at the end of the day, sir, that which is before us is fundamental to who we are, Mr. Speaker, sir, and what this country will become. So with those few words, sir, I wish to commend the report. I support the report. I think it is a very good thinking piece, a thinking piece. It is not our report, sir, but it allows us to think about how we go forward, sir. I do hope Barbadians have a chance to reflect on it. I commend the members, sir, of the committee. And I trust that this work will allow us to build a parliament and a Barbados, sir, that allows us to better represent the people of this country and to better represent our country, period. With those few words, sir, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, I have been coming to this place to sit in this honorable chamber since 2003. And during that time, Mr. Speaker, I've sat on the back bench. I have sat in the chairman of committee's chair when the chairman of committees at that time was not available. I have sat on the opposition benches, second to last, if not last. And I've sat on the front bench. And through all of those years to now, it was pellucidly clear that there were certain things in this Parliament that were good, but there were also certain things that needed to be assessed and needed to be changed. this Parliament has to be fit for purpose and fit for the people that we come here to represent. You know, Mr. Speaker, every morning when I get up, I think of the serenity prayer. The serenity prayer. Courage to accept the things you cannot change. Knowing and understanding and the courage to change the things you can. And the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that is so vitally important as we take note of this report. And from this report, try to distill the good things that we think are important to keep and the things that are important to change. You know, Mr. Speaker, there's a saying that the most constant thing in life is change. And you have to have the courage to change those things that no longer fit the requirements of the country. And that's what we come here to do when we change laws. Laws that would have existed at one point in time that then needed to be changed. If we didn't believe in that, the Slave Code of 1661 would never have been changed. So obviously change is vital and important. But change also means perspective. Your perspective, for argument, and my perspective. And I often use this as a simple illustration of perspective. Because to you, there's a 6, because that's from where you sit. But even although it is the same number, from my perspective, it is a 9. So perspective is vitally important when assessing how things impact people's lives. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that whether we like it or not, we have to understand that elections change lives. I say it all the time. Elections change lives. If you didn't believe it, just ask the people in the United States of America today. Those people that had an immigrant status of one type or another. An election comes along, and that status is changed by executive order, as the honourable member who spoke from St. James Central said. And we have to understand that when elections change lives, they don't only change our lives, they change the lives of the people we represent. So we come to this honourable chamber to do the best we can for the majority of the people that we represent all of the time. Will that always happen? No. In everything, there will always be winners and losers. But obviously, as a caring government, we try to find policies where the proportionate number of winners far exceeds those few that may be losers. You know, Mr. Speaker, it is a great honor to be able to come to this chamber to represent 7,000, 8,000, some constituencies, 10 and 12,000 people. And what is our system based on? Clearly, 10 or 12,000 people cannot come and have a decision or a consensus on a particular bill. So every 4 or 5 years, we choose to come together, those people, and say, this is the person that I feel will most accurately represent my beliefs and what I want. And I want to speak how the member for St. James Central spoke, but taking a different way of seeing it. And it has to do with crossing the floor. But before I get into the crossing the floor point, I want to reflect on a little story. There is a structure in the pine, that allows the children from Parkinson, and other people, of course, to cross over from the Parkinson School to CBC, or from CBC to Parkinson. And you know, that was done at a time when a good friend of mine too, I love him dearly, calls me regular. A good friend of mine was the member for the constituency at that time. But you know, Mr. Speaker, that particular structure, I always call, and a lot of people call, the Hamila crossover. But that had a different connotation, because even although the structure was about a crossing over of a road, it also reflected the quantum of times that the member crossed over the floor. Always found himself crossing over to be in the halls of government at that time. No fault, I understand. But I take a slightly different perspective on it, similar to what the Honourable Member for St. James Central said, but different. I agree fully. When somebody goes into that booth to vote for you, to vote, let me say to vote, they essentially have three thoughts in their mind. Some people are going to vote for you as a fantastic candidate, you personally, as a good candidate. You're a good friend, I know you, you're a family member, I know your father, your mother, your uncle, your aunt, whatever. Voting for you, a personal vote. Irrespective of any party affiliation, they're voting for you. Incidentally, in my research, the people that can withstand when there is a swing against a government are those that have the large number of personal votes. That's been my experience. And I think the people that look at the political science and electoral trends would agree with that. The people that have the largest percentage personal vote, they tend to be the ones that can withstand a swing because it is a personal vote. But in addition, people also go into that voting booth and vote for a party. They go and say, well, my mother tells me that if I don't vote for the Barbados Labour Party, don't come back in this house. You hear that all the time. My father was always a Barbados Labour Party. Not mine. My father was a Democrat Labour Party. But you would hear that. My father was always Barbados Labour Party. You would hear we vote for Barbados Labour Party from the time, from Henry Ford time. And we ain't changing. So people vote for two things. People vote for the candidate, people vote for party. But there's a third person that goes in, may not like you as a candidate, as the Honourable Member suggested, may not like the party per se or persons in the party, but loves the political leader. I remember the previous Prime Minister, Owen Arthur, used to have something called the Owen-Dems. I don't know if you remember the Owen-Dems, Mr. Speaker. The Owen-Dems. People that were affiliated to one party but loved the former Prime Minister, Owen Arthur, and would vote for a leader. I have no doubt that there's the Mia mob today, for sure. And there are people all over, every party and any party, that would vote. In fact, there are people all through the diaspora, that would vote for the current Prime Minister. So people essentially, well, I guess, you know, there's a fourth that we don't consider. That is the vote against. The vote against. People might come and say, it's not that I like a party. It's not that I like a leader. It's not that I like a candidate, but I don't like the man that running against you. Or I don't like the woman that running against you. So that's another one that we don't really consider, but that is also a significant quantum. So I get back then to when a person who has a constitutional right to cross over the floor, to decide that I am no longer associating with the party that people voted for, and I am going to associate with another party or sit as an independent. What have you done? You have technically disenfranchised the people that voted for party and voted for leader. And I guess technically you've also disenfranchised the ones that voted against, because you're supporting the people that demand that voted against your party. So I firmly agree with the recommendations that what you should have is to go back to the polls and let the people decide. Let the people decide. Now, I've looked through. I don't think there's anyone, maybe one person, who crossed the floor and then was able to win their seat again. I think it was only Sir Richie who was able to do that. But then again, he didn't go to he formed a new party, which essentially is a little different. But, so, even the member for Christchurch South, he'll be going against history. And maybe that's why he's decided to move the place where he's going to be putting his hat down in the ring and move into another location, thinking that he would have better opportunities at that location. But history says that those who cross the floor generally do not win back their seat. So I think he has an uphill battle there. And I think that we have to recognize that we have to take the bull by the horns. We have to look at all of the recommendations that the Parliamentary Reform Commission has put forward. But this one in particular, as I listen to members, certainly resonates with people across Barbados. Mr. Speaker, when we think of a parliament must be representative of the whole of the society. What does that mean? That means that it should have people, male, female. It should have people who are disabled. It should have people from a cross-section of the social strata. It should have people from varying professions. Even when I look to the Parliamentary Reform Commission members, and I thank them for joining us here in this chamber today, you see the diversity. It isn't all of them that were members of Parliament. It isn't all of them that were academics, but a cross-section, to be able to give that voice to all people. Comes back to this perspective, to be able to get the perspective of those who were members of Parliament and those who were never members of Parliament, but are able to show a perspective from the outside looking in. And I think that the report certainly tries to capture that, although it showed dissenting voices from time to time. I think it did a very good job in capturing what the people wanted and showed a difference and why a difference with what former members of Parliament may have wanted, because they saw it from the inside. I also want to mention, because I heard the Prime Minister talk about it, is diaspora voting. And diaspora voting, and I was able to say, I have a good friend from Cape Verde, and they have diaspora voting. And diaspora voting is ticklish. I spoke to one of their members of Parliament to find out, what caused that and what was behind the thinking of the diaspora voting. And he was very, very clear. He said that Cape Verde, small population, but large diaspora. And he said that they have records to show And in fact, the diaspora presented and showed that the remittances from their diaspora is over $350 million a year. That is not an insignificant sum for a small population. And he said that their parliament, recognizing the quantum of the remittances coming from the diaspora and the petitions that they had gotten from the people in the diaspora, they thought it was absolutely fit to hear in their parliament what the diaspora was thinking and what the diaspora wanted. Again, perspective. It's all about perspective. Again, perspective. Hearing the perspective of some persons who are living on the outside, but having a perspective to what happens in their parliament on the inside. And I think it is a valid point. It is something that we'll have to delve further into. But having diaspora voting or some form of diaspora voting is certainly something that has caught my interest. But I think it needs further research as to how diaspora voting is done, when it is done, and where would that person sit. And you know, Mr. Speaker, we have a bicameral system. So diaspora voting could sit in either house, and we have to make those kinds of ideas and judgments, because when you come to parliamentary reform and the parliamentary reform process, it almost gives you that slate to rethink, to reimagine, and see what we can do different to be able to serve all the people and understand their perspectives. Now, Mr. Speaker, the other thing that obviously caught my eye is proportional representation or first past the post. Now let me say up front that I firmly believe in first past the post. I think that the preponderance, 50% plus one, is where we have always been, and I believe that that is exactly where we need to remain. And that was supported by the Commission, and I firmly believe in that. I think it is the fairest system. I don't like the idea of proportional representation, because then the concept of how do you get on the slate? Who makes the decision of the slate? And then, is that decision on the slate representative of the needs of the people, or is representative of the needs of the political party that you may be in? So I like the first past the post system. I think that it is vital, and I think that is something that we should keep. Parliament also, Mr. Speaker, must also not only serve the people, but we must understand that parliamentarians are people too. And parliamentarians, in order to do their job effectively, we have to accept that we have to take care of them when they are in here, and to some extent when they leave here. It's an unusual and different kind of job. Mostly when you are an employed person, Mr. Speaker, you're employed for a period of time till you decide when to leave. In this job, there are a few thousand people in your area. They decide when it is time for you to leave. So your security of tenure is not the same as it is with other jobs. And sometimes people tend to forget that. The Honourable Prime Minister said, and it was very clear, we don't get severance. When the people on the outside in our constituency says, ah, boy, Will, you had a little time there, now we got to see somebody else. Okay. But what has happened to me while I was in Parliament? As a minister, it means that we have a convention that you shouldn't practice. So me, for instance, as an oral surgeon, can no longer practice, spend 7 years now in this job, not practicing. The people say, well, boy, it's time for you to go home. Fine. What has happened to my manual dexterity skills? And I looked straight at a member of the practicing fraternity. What has happened to my manual dexterity skills? What has happened when my insurers say, in order for you to get insurance again, you got to go and do a refresher course because you have not been practicing for 7, 10, 15 years or whatever it is, and you now expect to go and pick up a scalpel and offer a surgical procedure to somebody after not having a scalpel in your hand for 10 or 15 years? They say, no, 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 no. You can't do that. You got to go and do a refresher course. What happens the day after the election when you're out of a job? So the idea of a resettlement grant in this Commission's recommendations, I am not saying yes or no, but it's something we have to look at. Because at the end of the day, parliamentarians are people too. You know, the man that owns Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Records, I think he has a spacecraft thing too, Sir Richard Branson. He said something once that stuck with me. He says, take care of your employees, and they will take care of your clients. Take care of your employees, and they will take care of your clients. So we have to, in fact, even on an airline, they say, put on your mask first, and then look after the others. So we have to understand that when we look at parliamentary reform, we also have to look at how we treat the individual parliamentarians. Not only having a code of conduct, and yes, I agree with the code of conduct that is recommended, but also understanding that they're people too. And after this chamber, they have lives to go back to. They have families that would have given up time with them that they have to go back to. They have all sorts of commitments that they have to go back to. And this is something that I think the Commission has, to some extent, started the discussion on it, and it is something that we have to look at further. You know, Mr. Speaker, being a member of Parliament is a heavy burden that all of us in this chamber carry. It is what I consider a labor of love. It's a labor of love. It's a labor of love because you are literally on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And you know, I say it all the time. In 2003, when I came to this chamber, people would come to your office, they would call, they would email, or they would see you in the supermarket and rush up to you and ask a question and so on and so forth. They still do all of those things. But, in addition to that, you're going to get the WhatsApp messages that they expect you to respond to. And you know, if you don't look at it, the blue tick don't come up. So if the blue tick don't come up, they know you don't look at my message. You will get the Facebook message that they expect you to respond to as well. You will get the Instagram message that people expect a response to as well. So what has happened is people have a greater expectation of your ability to respond and respond quickly and efficiently in the shortest possible time. And it is becoming an increasingly harder burden on the average member of Parliament in here. And we have to accept that. And we have to take care of our people. Because if we can't take care of our people, then who will? And we, at the end of the day, want the best representatives and the best members of Parliament to be able to provide the best service to the constituents of Barbados. And that's what we're striving for. But we need to give them the best tools. We need to give them the best terms of service. We need to understand that after their service in here, they still need to have some form of care. You know, Mr. Speaker, it hurts me sometimes to see a member of parliament, and I have from time to time, who gave 5, 10 years to this honorable chamber. Did that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year that we've all done. Leave the chamber for whatever reason, and then struggle on the outside. It's a hard thing, but it's a reality that we all face. Struggle on the outside and have difficulty. Is that fair? Is that right? Is that just? Because this is not the same type of job. This is a labor of love. And if we want the best politicians, and if we want the best representation for the people, we have to start thinking about how we treat ourselves. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I came to this honorable chamber, and I don't normally talk about money in chamber in terms of what we get and so on, but this one I'm reminded of. The Parliament gives, I think in 2003 it was $2,500 to run the constituency, pay the bills, the water, electricity, buy the stationery, and all of that stuff. And you would not be, in fact you know, but the public would not believe that 22 years later, and we accept that inflation happens, and that prices go up, and that things change. You would not believe that the quantum that I came to this honorable chamber at is still the same number. It's still the same number. I don't ask for myself, but I ask for the other members who have a responsibility to be able to meet the needs of their constituents and the needs of running an office as well, and must find some difficulty with that number being what it still is. Mr. Speaker, there are so many different things in this commission, whether the Speaker should be a Speaker in his own right and have the precincts of the Parliament as his constituency, as in the Westminster system, something I fully support, because I think it gives, if nothing else, that independence of a Speaker when dealing with one side or the other side. Understanding that you must have that independent voice, that person in which you can discern whether one person is within the rules, not within the rules, is appropriate, not appropriate, and I understand it. And I think that certainly is something that we would have to consider deeply when the Cabinet comes to assess this report. I think apart from in terms of conduct, pension age. Pension age, and I heard the Prime Minister say that she believes in the age of 60. I understand that. I heard other people may have other views. I understand that too. But when you come to this chamber and when we look at Parliamentary Reform Commission's work, it is not only thinking of what happens when you're in government, but also what happens when you're in opposition. And how does the parliamentary reform relate to when you are in opposition? And I think when we look at how things are done, when we look at how people perceive us, and how the nation perceives what we do, when we do it, and how we do it, but recognizing that we have to take care of others as well, it is something that will need further discussion, for sure.
The honourable member has 2 more minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This Parliamentary Reform Commission's work is a tremendous body of work. They had multiple meetings, heard multiple submissions, and I truly salute the work that the commissioners have done. I think it gives us a framework as the government to look at what we want to keep, look at what we want to alter, and discern what is the best for the people of this country at this time. I think that a lot more will be discussed about it, and we will hear perspectives that we did not even consider now, but will come up later. And I certainly recommend this commission report. Thank you.
Honourable Member St. Michael, South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin where the last honourable member left off by acknowledging the long and hard work of the Parliamentary Reform Commission and thanking them for that work. I had what I consider a privilege, really, on the last occasion that I was on the backbench, of sitting. I had the commission all to myself on that occasion. Sitting and giving evidence, it certainly felt like giving evidence, because I also was cross-examined, I would say, for them to get a better understanding, a greater idea of what my own thoughts were from my particular position on some of the recommendations that had come to them so far. And I think that the rigor of that kind of questioning and analysis we see reflected in the report that is before us. I also believe that having declared ourselves a republic has thrust us into a particular moment in our independence journey and in our history. And I think that parliamentary reform must reflect that moment and must meet that moment. I believe that the report and the work of the Commission needed to have gone back to first principles about why are we doing this? As a parliament, what are we for? This is a simple question. Because the form that is represented, the recommendations of changes to form and structure that are meant to be represented here, would have to follow the function that we agree that we serve in a 2025 Barbados and beyond. I do not know that we, notwithstanding all of the tremendous work and some of the solid recommendations, have seen in the report a full return or a full acknowledgement of what such a body of recommendations would look like had we gone back to that first principles approach to say, if we were to set aside what we have, and if we were to build up to what we want, what would a Parliament of Barbados look like today? And I think we start to see some of that, but perhaps the next stage of our consultations would be to go even further in that direction. And I say that because we all know from whence we've come, or whence we've come. We all know that we, as a former colony, have inherited a lot of the form and the institutions and the manner and some of the culture of our former oppressors. And becoming a republic is the moment that allows us to, as far as we can, shed the parts of that that do not serve us. Not for the sake of shedding them, but because we have truly rejected some of the structures and systems that have been in place that do not serve us. And I have to go squarely, as I'm sure will be no surprise to those who are listening to me, I have to go directly to the question of our bicameral system of government. There are proposals in the report that relate to the Senate, the composition of the Senate, the recommendation to retain an appointed Senate. And I really wonder if we've reflected on the origin of this two-chamber system. I wonder really whether we've reflected on the origin of the peerage in the UK. The House of Lords in the UK traditionally has been made up of peers. Lords and barons and earls, landed people, people of means and wealth, who were added as a check against the clergy that normally made up the parliament in the UK at the time, and then the other common representatives, as they were then called, of the people. And to my mind, the idea really was that there needed to be certain interests, those who had wealth, those who had land, those who had something to lose, that there needed to be people represented there who would defend those interests on behalf of that particular class. But it seems to me that people who have means and wealth already have a platform that is given to them by virtue of those means. And so, to continue to reflect a system whose elitist origins we as a republic would want to reject suggests to me that we should discuss and think through some more. And again, I don't say these things because we just want to set aside things for the sake of setting them aside. But what is the purpose of the second chamber of Parliament? At the same time that the report discusses the retention of an appointed Senate, it also makes a proposal for national MPs. And the Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, when she led off the debate on this resolution, went through some of the tenets of that approach. And what is proposed here suggests that the national MPs draw on interests and skills that may not be found among the lower house of Parliament, or among the MPs who are ordinarily elected by the people in the system that we've come to know. And so the notion is that you want people with different kinds of skills whose background and experience can be brought to bear on the process of lawmaking. That is fair. That is called the Senate. That is where we currently have represented interests, backgrounds, skills that are brought to bear on the lawmaking process. And so it seems to me that if you're going to have an appointed Senate, it would negate the need for another layer of national MPs whose reason for being is that you are trying to get more skills in the process of lawmaking than those that you already have represented in the lower house. The other alternative, it seems to me, and I accept that we are all thinking out loud in this debate, it seems. We are reflecting. And so allow me to continue to reflect. It seems to me that the other alternative would simply be to have an elected Senate. Because as a member for St. Michael's South shared earlier, you have a system currently where the people of Barbados have elected their representatives. We come to this honorable place, and we, in committee and in this place, go through a painstaking process of refining legislation. And then it is sent to another place where people have not been elected. And from time to time, sir, we will sit in this place and hear notice of corrections and amendments that are sent from the Senate for us to note that, hear what? We've corrected you. Now, it may be the case that there are checks and balances required for a particular chamber. None of us is perfect. And with the best will in the world, there are things that one might miss. But if there is to be a second chamber, let us think about the process by which that chamber should come to be. It seems to me that in some of this discussion, whether it is about national MPs and the notion that constituency MPs may want to continue to work on those very parochial service-related issues, while others turn their minds to loftier national matters. A concept with which I disagree fundamentally, because all of us called here are called to consider and debate and discuss national issues as reflected by our constituents. That is what canvassing is. Canvassing is not the process of asking for votes. Let us remind ourselves that canvassing, and I'll use the example of when I believe it was the 2023 budget, the 2023 estimates process. And ahead of that, I, as I normally do, went out in the constituency to hear from people, well, what is it that you feel about how your money should be spent? And it was that, as a result of that canvas, it was that information that informed the speech that I gave, or the questions that I asked, or the things that I said in this process of refining the estimates of revenue and expenditure. So an MP, as elected by people, has a duty to reflect in this place the national interests and concerns of the people who have elected us. That is our job. And it is perhaps an indictment on our system of democratic governance that it seems that we are now concerned mostly with fulfilling service requirements that really ought to be carried out by a strong and functioning public service. I dare say, and perhaps is a conversation that we don't want to have, because it is a conversation that bears up a certain kind of electoral system. But I dare say that some of the functions that are fulfilled by MPs would not need to be fulfilled by MPs if we had an executive that functioned in the way that it needed to function. If we had a system of public service delivery that was sufficiently resourced and structured to deliver for people such that no middle person is required. I hope that we're getting frank in this debate today. Such that no middle person is required, because then we would have to require more of our MPs. Then our MPs would have to be assessed on the basis of the extent to which their advocacy on behalf of people becomes real in people's lives through legislation and other kinds of representation that they make to the executive. That's why we are here. And I feel that we have all of us in this chamber and all of us in this country so benefited or so set up a system that we know that certain kinds of activities then convert themselves into a certain kind of electoral benefit. And that system has existed for so long that it becomes difficult for us to turn our minds to a system that requires of MPs representation at a higher level. And so I would suggest that some of the recommendations made here would really be solved, one, by an elected Senate, or by a strengthened, responsive public service. And that we run the risk of accommodating dysfunction by tweaking things that we ought not to be tweaking. Let us go to the heart of the reasons that people experience suboptimal service delivery. Let us go to the heart of what is stopping a person in a country of 270,000 people from being able to send an email request or to pick up a phone or to otherwise make contact with a government institution and get a fair and effective response. Let's be honest in this discussion. But sir, I also want to get to another part of the report which makes reference to a constituency development fund. And, you know, sir, democratic governance doesn't function in a vacuum. We say all the time, and perhaps people don't like to hear this, but I think that each of us as Barbadians has to think about, do we want democratic governance? Do we want democratic governance? Because if we do, there's an investment that needs to be made in that governance. There's a cost to governance. There's a cost to democracy. And usually when people say that, they're talking about certain financial requirements. And those who spoke before also made reference to some of those financial requirements. But there are also other costs of governance by a parliament and by an executive. Because the electoral processes in which we engage and the other vehicles of democratic participation that we ask people to engage in outside of voting, they have a cost as well. They have a cost of time and they have a cost of opportunity. So when we look at recommendations that relate, for example, to the right of recall of MPs, that relate to whether we should have a fixed date of elections, and that relate to what should be, whether a by-election should be triggered when a person crosses the floor, we also have to consider the cost of time and opportunity to triggering elections. How many elections within a particular 5-year period can a country withstand in terms of the investment of people's time and energy and focus in being a part of this democratic process? In terms of the fact that essentially many of the activities of governance also pause when an election is called, even if it is a by-election. And that resources have to be mobilized to flow to those different democratic processes. So there is a lot that recommends some of what is in the report when it comes to things like whether by-election is triggered when a person crosses the floor, and the arguments made so far make sense to the ear. If I cast myself in the place of a voter, which I am, and I know that I have walked into a booth and I voted for a person, I've also voted for a party. And there has to be some consideration to the consequences of separating oneself from the party platform on which one was elected. Perhaps there should be consequences. I only invite us to think through and make sure we understand that every part of an electoral process and every part of our activities of democratic governance have a cost. They have a real financial cost, and they have a cost of time and focus and energy of a population that they now have to turn themselves, and we want them to engage fully. And if we want them to engage fully, do we want to be calling, recalling, and having elections at a moment's notice? Something, since we are all simply reflecting out loud, something to be considered. But there's another part of this cost to democratic governance that relates to the Constituency Development Fund. And you know, I hear a lot of calls from those who have the luxury of so doing for campaign finance reform. And I always find it curious that the conversation about financing democracy starts in the place of calls for campaign finance reform when there is actually no structure, really, around campaign finance, number one. But the truth is that the financing that we have to be concerning ourselves with is about financing representation. An election is a moment in time. An election is a process by which people are elected to serve, and then the service begins. Then the service happens for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so there is an unspoken, undiscussed cost. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch West mentioned the $2,550 that is right now the constituency service fund that has not increased for several years. But the fact is that there is a cost that those who call for campaign finance reform from the protected places which they sit, I dare say, who may have never had to reach out to an MP for help or support. As we deliver service to people, to our constituents, there are projects, there are activities, there are community efforts with which people seek support that are not financed. I had, in my clinic last week, one of my young friends from the constituency came to see me. We started talking about some of the kinds of support that he would like in his career. And as we were going through the conversation, it was a very casual conversation. He said to me, well, I thought that y'all just get like 50 grand a month or something to spend on the constituency. He wouldn't mind me saying this. I haven't identified him. There is a notion, and we don't talk about it. And I understand that a parliament is a place where we are very genteel and demure, and we are gentlemen and gentle ladies in this place, but we have to get frank about what is required to serve. The idea of a constituency development fund I support very much. And let me say from the outset that the notion that a member of parliament who won the support of a majority of her or his constituency cannot be trusted to execute and give account for and give details of expenditure from a constituency development fund, I reject that entirely. The notion that from the time a person is declared the duly elected representative of a constituency, they can no longer be trusted, we should all reject that. It does not mean that we don't have to give account for how the funds are spent, just like any other fund would need to be audited. And we subject ourselves to that. But it is time that we understand that the things that are asked of us cannot be delivered unless they are financed. It brings me to the question of the terms and conditions to which the member for Christchurch West, of which he made mention earlier. And I will not get into them, but I think one of the reasons that they've occupied some conversation is that the extent to which an MP is remunerated directly affects the extent to which she or he can do work in the constituency. Let us be real. And so the question that has to be asked in general is being an MP work? Is it work? No, is it a job? This, I believe, should have been a question, a fundamental question put before the Parliamentary Reform Commission. Is it work? Because the fact is, and many people may not realize this, is that it is currently classified as part-time work. The reason that the Parliamentary Reform Commission has considered the question, and I have read the discussion in which they've engaged, on whether there should be full-time parliamentarians, is because currently parliamentarians are part-time. Let us give a thought to the implications of that. It means that the MPs who sit on the front bench in this place are ministers who themselves have one of the most, if not the most demanding job. And then those who are on the back bench, and I'm looking squarely at my friend, the member for St. George North, have equally demanding commitments in another place. And so I ask the question, is being a member of Parliament work? Because we have to frame it as such. What should be the expectations of a constituency with respect to their member of Parliament? Are there terms of reference? Is there a job description? Are there hours of work? Are there other protections that both the member for St. George North and the member for St. Peter insist on for other members of the population? Is it work? Now, if I say, as the member for Christchurch West has said, that it is national service, that it is a labor of love, fine. If that is the case, let us then give the part-time MP, and there's no recommendation here to make the MP full-time. So let us give the part-time MP the wherewithal to truly serve people. I said in another place on this matter that in our current system, poor people's children cannot be MPs. The first day that I went on the ground in St. Michael South Central in 2016, well, he wasn't that young, less young now, a gentleman said to me, "Are you a millionaire?" I said, "Absolutely not." He said, "Oh, well, don't bother." And we went on to have a very frank conversation. He started out being facetious to get my attention. But what he was saying was that there is a certain financial responsibility that attaches to this work. And the truth is that when you look back, and there's a term that is used in this place that's called political class, and I reject the term. I reject the term, even though I understand that people are trying to say that political service is a category of work, but I reject the term because political class means something different to me. It speaks to a group of people who historically had the wherewithal independently to finance their campaigns and their representation. If we are looking to democratize political participation and representation in this country, we have to create a system whereby poor people's children, people who do not come with any ancestral wealth and lands, can represent people in this country. So that if I am able to rally the trust and the confidence of a constituency, that should be enough. I should not then have to bring the wealth of previous generations that some may be able to enjoy in order to be on an equal playing field with my colleagues. If we are having a frank discussion, let us have a frank discussion about whether this work that we do is work. You are not asked if you go to work for Sagicor or CIBC or some financial institution to bring money from home to do the job. You manage accounts. And so this, to me, is a matter, this matter of a constituency development fund, I absolutely support. It is done in other jurisdictions, and I am not talking about putting money in an institution of the public service. I am not talking about putting money in an institution of the public service that already has implementation challenges to then put the Member of Parliament in another spot of bother to try and get the funds out of that institution. I am talking about an independent fund that MPs are, on which MPs are able to make decisions, audit it, have a third-party accountant. There are ways to do it. Other countries in this hemisphere do it. Sir, let me turn finally to...
Honourable Member, you're correct, finally.
Yes. Let me turn finally, well, sir, I would think that you would want me to say this next thing because it supports the role of an independent speaker.
Honourable Member, that has nothing to do with the chairperson. That has nothing to do with the chairperson, nothing at all.
But I do support the call to have an independent speaker because I realize that the role and the work and the structure of Parliament, the resources that we invest in the Parliament, have to be managed and led and guided by a presiding officer that is able to steer a vision for how a Parliament should function. Sir, the truth is that we have to more and more be relevant to the lives of people. Sir, you have been to parliaments all over the world in your current capacity and seen the level of investment, seen the fact that MPs in every chamber have independent resource capacities. They have staff that do research, that give support to them at the level of the constituency. Some jurisdictions have a staffing budget whereby they can say, look, I may not need a research officer because I cover it. I do all my research myself, but I would like to have 3 people in the constituency who can help be my legs and eyes and ears on the ground to be able to deliver to my constituents. And so if I can trust somebody to elect them to a seat in this place, surely I can trust their judgment to understand with a certain pot of resources, what is the staffing that will really make me effective and really help drive the work that I am doing. Sir, I will admit that I spent my time on the things, more fundamental issues. There's much in the report with which I agree. Gender quotas does not happen to be one of them, but that may be a discussion for another day. But there's much in the report with which I agree. I've chosen to spend my time, however, on a call for us to believe that our job here today is to do more than tweak the edges, than think about what might be a slight improvement or what might relieve a little bit of the burden. We have a unique and historic opportunity here to say to ourselves, who is it and what is it that we want to be? How is it that we will improve our relevance in people's lives at a time where people all over the world are questioning whether their systems of governance are working for them? While there's much in the report that finds favor with me, I have to end on a challenge for us to further challenge ourselves beyond where this report lands. And to look at issues like the Senate, the national MPs, even the role of the president, and whether the president becomes now a tripartite, a third member of the parliament by giving assent to legislation. That is a very significant function. And I feel that, again, that we have this notion of a ceremonial head of state that has executive functions, and that we need to go back to unpack completely. Are these functions truly ceremonial, or do these functions start to now tread in the area of the executive? And to really be able to say the president should, in our new Republican Parliament, perform these particular functions that do not, in fact, reflect, in some cases, what the Governor General was. In many cases, what we are doing is to be continuing the functions of the representative of the Queen or the King of England. And why? So I encourage us to take the parts of this report that serve us, and quite frankly, to set aside and to further interrogate the ones that don't. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Mr. Speaker, we refer to announcements by Your Honor.
I am in receipt of a letter dated July 1st, 2025, from the Deputy Speaker, Her Honor, Cynthia Ford. His Honor, Mr. Arthur Walter, Speaker of the Office Assembly, Bridgetown, St. Michael. Dear sir, I wish to inform you of my resignation from the position of Deputy Speaker of this Honorable Chamber. I have enjoyed the opportunity to be given the privilege to serve in such a distinguished position. I also wish to thank the members of this Honorable Chamber for their patience, guidance, and support for the past months. It was indeed an honor to serve. I take this opportunity to inform you and this chamber of my decision to resign with immediate effect from that position. With sincere gratitude, Cynthia Whiteford, JP.
Business, election of Deputy Speaker on the standing orders.
Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would like to, in light of that letter of correspondence from the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, to be able to, on behalf of the host, thank her for her stellar service in the position. As usual, she has continued to rise to the occasion when required to do so as a true team player, and the host is eternally grateful to her. In light of that, I would therefore wish Mr. Speaker to be able to move under Section 3, Paragraph 2, for the fact that the host has now had a vacant post of Deputy Speaker, to be able to elect another member to that office, and I would therefore beg to move that the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest be...
Honourable Member, could you also refer just public discourse?
Sure, Mr. Speaker. So Section 3, subsection 1 states that as soon as the Speaker has been elected, the House shall proceed to the election of a member to be Deputy Speaker of the House. If the paragraph 2 states, if the office of the Deputy Speaker shall fall vacant at any time during a Parliament, the House shall elect another member to that office.
And also Standing Order 21.
And in relation to Standing Order 21, which relates to the exemption from notice, on such a motion, notice has been dispensed with under this particular provision, which states that unless the standing orders otherwise provide, notice shall be given of any motion which it is proposed to move, with the exception of the following. Now, paragraph subsection 1, a motion for the election of a Deputy Speaker at Standing Order number 3.
That was just to ensure that it is done as per the standing orders
Standing
of this
orders.
honorable chamber.
So, Mr. Speaker, I would therefore beg to move that the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest be appointed as Deputy Speaker to this House.
Elected.
To be elected as Deputy Speaker.
Seconder, please.
I beg to second it.
The question before this honorable chamber is that the honorable member for St. Michael Northwest be elected as Deputy Speaker of this honorable chamber. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The honorable member for St. Michael Northwest is therefore elected as the Deputy Speaker of this honorable chamber.
Revert to order number 8, sir.
Honorable member for Christchurch, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, allow me to express my gratitude to the Honourable Member for St. Thomas for her service in this position. She is a lady without peer, and I use the word lady and not the word woman or female, right? But she is a lady in every sense of the word without peer. She's been a source of guidance for a number of us. Some people call her auntie, some people call her gran, right? But by whatever name we call her, it is as a mark of respect and a mark of appreciation for what she has done and continues to do for us. I would also like to take the opportunity to congratulate the Honourable Member of St. Michael Northwest on his appointment as a Deputy Speaker. Sir, with respect to the resolution before us, I want to begin, because oftentimes we start a speech and we have things we want to say, and sometimes we get caught up in it and we don't actually address the specifics of what we want to say. But I want to start by thanking the committee for their sterling work in putting together this report. For those who have actually seen the report,
Yes.
the report is as comprehensive, as conclusive, as detailed as a report can possibly be, capturing the competing thoughts, explaining the processes by which the committee came to its recommendations. It captured the majority decisions, it captured the minority decisions. And for those of us, sir, who practice law, sometimes there is as much information, as much meat into the substance of the matter in the minority decision as it is in the majority. Actually, oftentimes, the appeal from a position is based on an articulated view of a minority, appealing against the final view of what would have been the majority at that point in time. So I want to thank the committee. It was long reading. It was granular in its detail. It was explicit in its content. And I urge people, we might have articulated in here some of the highlights of the proposal, of the report. We might have elaborated on some of the specifics of the report. But for those who are minded to, if even you've heard something that piques your interest, I urge you to go to the report. The report is online. It was put online by the Government Information Service. It's on the Parliament website. It is easily found. For those who have a specific point that concerns them, don't confine yourself to the summary of the points at the beginning, but go to the complete articulation of the point in the body of the report. A lot of effort was put in to it, and I think we owe not only a debt of gratitude to those who sat in the committee and the chair, but we also owe them to read in detail the parts that concern particularly individuals or interest groups so that they can understand exactly what was ventilated and what led to the final position. So I thank the committee. Sir, we start by acknowledging that when this building was built, there was no contemplation at the point in time that any of us would have been present in this building. At the point in time when these soft stone blocks were laid one on top of the other, these arches created the stained glass with British Royalty Commission. There was no contemplation of anybody remotely with the hue or complexion or tint of any of us would ever have sat in these seats. As we went through with various amendments were made, sir, at certain points in time to standing orders, to matters that affect us, to rules, as they appeared relevant at that point in time. And we come now, sir, to the report of the Parliamentary Committee, because I do not believe there was I can't remember the last time there was a parliamentary review, but I think it was back in the 90s. It was at least 30 or 40 years ago that the last review of the processes, terms and conditions, anything relating to parliamentary governance was actually undertaken. Now, sir, cast your mind back to 40 years ago. I can cast mine. I was 12. And 40 years ago, there was no such thing as a cell phone. 40 years ago, there was no such thing as the internet. 40 years ago, sir, I wrote my tests in hand scribe, in cursive. If even I go back to 30 years ago, when I became a lawyer, we did our exams handwritten. Our assignments were handwritten. There was one person in my class, one person who had a computer. One. The rules under which we exist now are framed against a backdrop of that time. That time, sir, is incomprehensible to a child growing up now. That time is inconceivable to a child born within the last 10 years. So we are operating under a set of archaic rules that have no practical import to what it is that we do here. Sir, I'm going to touch on a couple of the points and then get to the main one that I wish to discuss. If we look, sir, at the recommendation in relation to the Auditor General, that is at 52 in the synopsis. There's a recommendation, sir, that the Auditor General's office must be properly staffed and resourced. Now, that goes without being said. The Auditor General has on a number of occasions articulated that he is dissatisfied with the resources available to him to actually complete his audit processes and prepare his reports. It is critical for us, for good governance and good government, that the Auditor General, that the Office of the Auditor General be in a position to carry out its mandate and deliver what is expected. A lot relies on that. The Auditor General, sir, is the watchdog of government. It's the watchdog on the government spend, it's the watchdog on the financial rules. Sir, the recommendation is that the office should be independent, it should be housed within Parliament, it should be resourced by Parliament, but it must stay independent. It's a constitutional position, it must stay independent. I fully support that. We've seen, sir, the import of the Auditor General's reports. Under the last government, the Auditor General's report sparked great interest, sir, and furious debates with respect to the Public Accounts Committee. Efforts were made to stall that committee. I was on it when we were in opposition, sir. And great efforts were made to stall that committee because no one wanted, the government of the day did not want the facts relating to certain matters to come out. Then we had the other point I'm going to come to. When we look, sir, at communications officers and IT, there's a recommendation here in the report that all the proceedings in Parliament be streamed. All. The meetings of the subcommittees, the meetings of everything, sir, relating to Parliament. The business of Parliament must not be done in secret. I remember when we fought to have the last meetings of the Public Accounts Committee streamed, and there was serious backlash from the last government. They did not want it streamed. They didn't want the meetings to happen. They kept stalling the quorum. They entirely blocked the streaming of the meetings. Now, sir, quite frankly, I do not believe that anything that we're doing here should be a secret at all. Right now, we're televised. The public can go on YouTube and watch live our debates as it is their right. We are here doing the business of the people in the name of the people. And the people must have the opportunity and the right to view what is happening live and understand whether the representations being done on their behalf are actually reflective of the will of the people. If it makes sense, it must see when certain persons are here making a mockery of the process. It must be able to see the contributions being made with respect to certain topics, whether it elaborates, whether it clarifies, or whether it totally confuses. It must be able, the public must be able to see, sir, when people come in here and talk complete foolishness. Complete foolishness in the name of politics. People must be able to see the business and the workings of Parliament to put themselves in a position to make an informed choice when it comes to making the next X. I make that X based on what the member for Christchurch West did on my behalf. How did he represent himself and myself? I make that X based on what the member for St. Michael South did in here. Did he impress me by what he said? Did it make sense? Did it yield a benefit to me? Did he articulate a position on behalf of me? The public must have the opportunity to hear and evaluate the performance of their representatives, not just in here, sir, but even in the subcommittees. Because in the subcommittees is where a lot of the nitty-gritty and the important decisions are actually made and taken. Now, sir, also contemplated in the report are communications officers. It is a long, hard struggle and a long, hard toil, sir, in some debates. If we use, for example, the budget debate, the Honourable Prime Minister spoke in the budget debate. Sorry, it was Minister Strawn that led off the budget debate last time. Sorry, sir. And he spoke for what was a reasonable amount of time to deliver his message. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition then got up, sir, and I actually felt I was a hostage. He spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke. He went over and over what he spoke about. Sir, quite frankly, that we recognize they don't have a lot of the resource availability that the front bench has, which is also, sir, a weakness in terms of the resources available to the backbenchers to prepare for their debates. But the Senate, as a class of persons, do not have the resources available. They must prepare their debates themselves. They must do their research themselves. And so when they come and sit in the Senate chamber and debate for hours into the night, similar to what we do, the amount given to them or allocated to them, sir, is almost insulting. And I do believe that the recommendations of the Parliamentary Reform Commission, that the Senate must be given something a little bit more reflective of the work that they actually do, are sound and should be applauded. Now, sir, allow me to come to the constituency allowance. The constituency allowance, sir, is paid differently from the salary of the MP or from the salary of the minister. Because it is an allowance, it should not be confused with your salary. As it stands now, the constituency allowance, sir, is $2,550. $2,550. And what is that allowance for? That allowance is for you to run your office. And when I say run your office, that includes electricity, Wi-Fi, water, paper, toilet paper, whatever. And then, from that same pool of money, you're expected to facilitate your constituents with any needs they may have or any assistance that should be rendered. Sir, that amount was first given. The constituency allowance, sir, was first done, I think, in 1998. And at that point in time, the amount that was voted was $2,250. Some persons made representation at that time in 1998 that was unfair. And they at least needed to bump it up to allow for the electricity bill. So in 1999, April 1999, that sum was bumped up by $250, making provision for bills to the $2,250, $2,550 that we have now. Sir, that was 1999. I don't know if somebody could quickly do an inflationary calculation from 1999 to now. But sir, that was 27 years ago. And 27 years ago, what $2,550 could do, it can't do now. And let me put this real, we are not asking for this. And this is not being sought to benefit us, because this should never benefit the individual politician. This should never benefit the individual MP. I have no difficulty, as the recommendations of the committee are, that be subject to scrutiny. Make the MP do audited accounts for it. Make them account for every red cent. I have no difficulty there. Every red cent, a receipt and an accounting. No difficulty there, sir. Because that money is actually supposed to go to deal with your constituency office and to help out your constituents to do programs for it. Sir, factor this. How many MPs put on and sponsor sports tournaments in their constituency? Most. Everybody has some sort of social programming. Everyone. There are a number of MPs, sir, that sponsor teams, sporting teams in their constituency. So I, for one, I sponsor every single sporting team in Christchurch East. Everyone, sir, I sponsor. Everyone. And individual athletes. It is impossible. It is impossible for any MP to do that and not draw on their own funds. And in a large way. Sir, if you factor, let's go once again. And I ask people, don't look at this. I want this to be separated from the remunerations of the MPs for this service. I want it to be aligned and let people understand what we're talking about, because we need the public of Barbados to understand this. Every time you go to your MP with a bill, it comes out of that $2,550. Every time you go to your MP and you get a voucher, it comes out at that $2,550. $2,550. Every time graduation comes around and you see the gifts appearing for the MP, it comes out of the exact same fund. So I am glad we couldn't agitate for it for ourselves. I am very glad, sir, that an independent committee reflective of both sides of the political divide and their independence said this really and truly can't work. There must be a fund. Let's be serious. There must be a fund to allow the person duly elected, selected by the majority of persons in their constituency, to employ their social programming. Let the person who get elected say what they plan to do for the constituency. Give them the resources, give everybody the equal resources, give them the resources to do it, and then judge them on what they do after. And once again, sir, I say this over and over because I want the press to carry this part. I have no difficulty, and I do not believe any of the persons sitting in here have a difficulty in having those funds, the use of those funds audited. No difficulty. I don't think anybody here can have a difficulty in having to account for the expenditure of those funds. No difficulty. Because the vast majority of us dip into our earnings, our personal funds, in a major way every single month. Sometimes to the detriment of yourself and your own financial obligations. I want to serve, sir, my constituents as best I can. I have a lot of plans for them. I got a lot of visions for what we can do. We've activated some of them, but sometimes you come up against the sticking point that you just ain't got the money. You run out. A number of us put on personal fundraisers. A number of us have to beg people to help us sponsor. That opens another can of worms. So this would allow a level of independence to allow the MPs to be able to work with the communities, the community groups, the promising people in the communities, those who are in need, and to be able to service them in the best way, in a transparent and audited manner. So I thank the commission. I thank the members over there in the gallery for recognizing this serious deficit and bringing it to the forefront. I personally will agitate for it because right now I'm doing it not against the background of somebody saying it's your own personal interest and selfishness, but against a considered opinion by an independent body charged with parliamentary reform, and this is one of the things they took up, explained in a major way, and distilled in a way that anybody can understand. Now, sir, I want as well for the public to understand that what is here is not set in stone. We have here recommendations made by the committee. As I said, we have majority decisions on one part, we have minority decisions on another part. At some point in time, Cabinet is going to have to make a final decision as to what we're going forward with. And when that happens, it will be debated. So whatever the final decision is and how we come down on a certain point, sir, we are going to once again have to come before the Parliament and put our case to the people of Barbados and to this House for the House to make a decision. And that decision, based on what I said before, sir, will be televised. Hopefully, it'll be subject to persons distilling it down. And until such time as we actually have the communications persons attached to Parliament, I undertake, sir, that the Government Information Service will, and those under the Ministry of Information, will actually provide that service in terms of distilling the nuts and bolts and the critical parts to be taken away from the debates, sir. So, all I say, did anybody actually have the chance to, I'm just checking to see if anybody put through the inflation table, $2,550 in 1999 to now? I'd say, sir, that's upward of $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000, right? $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000. So if we even go in a dollar for dollar based on the limited approach, we are well behind what a modern day transport would actually be. And I think, sir, we need to go further. It should not just be a bridging of the gap based on inflation. I think it should be a significant fund that allows some discretion on the part of the MP to enact social policies after consultation with members of his own constituency, with interest groups. Let us not be having to come to government begging for some person in the administration to decide this is not important. The fund, sir, is to allow the MP some measure of independence to actually push their own agenda and their own programs for the betterment of the constituents on the basis of what articulation they were actually elected in the first place. So I am asking, sir, that this go to some sort of significant fund that actually makes a difference and allows some level of independence in benefiting constituents. My last point, sir, my last point that I'm going to make, we see the unfairness caused by the gap since the last, how long it's taken to actually have a comprehensive parliamentary review. So, sir, I would like to think that going forward, I would like to think that going forward, sir, there's some mechanism in place that there be a continual review or at least a periodic review aimed at right-sizing the inequities that appear by the effluxion of time. We should not be waiting 30 years to do this again because, sir, whatever it is we decide now, in 30 years, once again, what informed that will be obsolete, as what informed the current rules are now obsolete. So I think we need to have a continuous review of this, a reassessment of the structures that Parliament itself needs, a reassessment, sir, of actual dollar values attached to certain things. And Parliament is a living, breathing thing. It gets elected every 5 years, or shorter, depending on the Prime Minister, but at the most every 5 years. It evolves to match the changing landscape of Barbados. It evolves to match the changing face of Barbados. So the rules that govern it and the policies that govern it should not remain static. So finally, sir, my good friend and one of the most dependable people, sir, in Parliament has slid me a note saying that the $2,550 for 1999 would now be worth $5,072 today. $5,072. I would tell you, sir, that if I had the additional double figure, the additional $2,550, that I could do a lot more for my constituents than I'm able to actually do now. But that, without prejudice to the fact that I think the fund should be larger and should be at the application discretion of the MP. So I end, sir, as I started, thanking the committee and the commission for the excellent work that they have done, and also, sir, for the way the report was structured in allowing all views to contend, and most importantly, allowing anybody that is reading to realize what were the pros, what were the cons, who was for, who was against, and what the settled view was, so people can have their own opinion and be informed fully about the recommendations made for reform for our Parliament. I thank you, sir.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:40 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2:40 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:40 p.m.